Hi, I'm Amanda Sosa Stone. I'm Chief Product Officer at Agency AXS. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about SEO. And I want to talk about why I chose to be the guest moderator on this Google Hangout for SEO. 2 years ago, I heard an art producer talk to me about how to find a photographer. And she says, I go to Google first. And I was shocked. I was shocked because they have resources. They get emails every day. They have, piles of direct mail cards. They have, tons of resources. And she uses Google. And it just opened up my mind to say, okay, we're ignoring a really important part of marketing, another prong that we're not paying attention to. I wasn't paying attention to as a consultant. So we have email, direct mail, portfolio showings, all these different marketing prongs that photographers spend thousands of dollars on. And they're ignoring one really obvious one, which is SEO. So as a product officer now at Agency AXS, my first mission was to make SEO accessible to photographers in our industry by respected people. So I'm proud to announce that we actually offer search engine optimization. But today's goal is to have illustrators and photographers understand what they can do on their own if the budget's not there or they're just really tech savvy. What can they do to really make themselves searchable? So today I have two wonderful experts in our industry, Blake Disher, Agency AXS's first SEO consultant and Go SEO founder, and I have Alan Mirabayashi. Oh, I found that last name, I worked it, from the founder from Photo Shelter. And thank you guys for joining us. You guys really have become my SEO guru, so thank you for participating in this today.
My pleasure.
Glad to be here.
Right. Are you guys ready? I've got my notes. I'm nervous to talk to you guys because you guys are the experts, and it's a topic that intimidates me. So I have my notes. I'm all ready to grill you guys. So first, Blake, tell me, what is SEO? I mean, for the people that are here, there's going to be everyone listening, from consumer to commercial photographers, people that are experts in this, people that have, really don't even know what SEO is. So just kind of give me the overall version for everybody listening.
I think search engine optimization, or SEO, as you say, refers to making adjustments to a website so that it's found on the search engines. I mean, it's pretty much that simple. SEO is usually split up into organic and pay per click. And what I always try to emphasize is the organic listings really don't cost anybody anything. There's no continuing cost on those organic listings, and it's really a function of making adjustments to the page and the code, or using templates that are SEO savvy or SEO conscious, and doing a little bit of off-page optimization, which we can talk more about.
Alan, I mean, how do you, when people ask you what is SEO, I mean, it's kind of become your forte when speaking. How do you describe it?
It's sort of a methodology for becoming visible in a search engine. If you think about Google and you think about all the people over there, they started with a very simple premise, which is, if somebody searches for plumber in New York City, how can we give them the best result for that? And so they had to come up with a set of rules to guide search engines. They didn't want spam to come up, etc. They didn't want people who were keyword bombing a page, plumber, 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 to win. They wanted real results to win. So they came up with a little algorithm, some black magic, but they didn't tell anyone what that secret was, because they didn't want people to game the system. So a lot of people who have studied search engine optimization have created a set of tips to sort of deconstruct that, and then said, well, if you want to be a New York plumber and rank high for that, then your homepage better say New York plumber on it. And when you go out into social media, people better be saying, oh, that guy's a great New York plumber. And all of these little factors combined together help you get higher in the rankings, because as we know, we live in such an age nowadays where I can't go a day without probably executing 10 searches for something. And so because we're in the information age, search is so crucial to finding content nowadays, and that's where SEO comes in.
Well, that really leads me to my next question. I mean, I feel like artists really are not putting SEO on the forefront. So why is it so important to artists? Yes, I know I'm looking for, today I Googled about a bracelet, maybe a plumber today. I have all these personal things, but why is it important in our industry? Like, how is it relevant?
I think that artists, I think that any individual sort of underestimates how people are looking for that type of person. So if you're a plumber, you're probably thinking, well, why would anyone ever Google plumber NYC? But I can think of several instances where I wanted to find an illustrator for a Christmas card, and so I started typing in illustrator and line art illustrator or watercolor illustrator, etc., or portrait illustrator, and all of a sudden you realize that anything where you don't have a lot of domain expertise in, or when you're looking for like a new option, you start Googling sort of automatically. And so I think that for photographers who say, well, nobody would ever search for wedding photographer Poughkeepsie, you're wrong, and the data will show you that you're wrong. And so there's a lot of opportunity to be found through search engines, which helps augment your marketing efforts.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we need to regard Google as my dad's Yellow Pages, because there's I can't tell you the last time I picked up a Yellow Pages that was delivered to my door. Everybody uses search engines these days to find wedding photographers, or like Alan said, illustrators, or what have you. And so it's super necessary to be found on page one.
So would we say Google's the godfather?
Google's the godfather for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Google has, the last numbers that I saw, they were either at or approaching 70% of search market share.
Wow.
So they really
and how different is SEO today than it was 5 years ago? Because I feel like 5 years ago people were talking about it and kind of scared, and then now it's like it's so 5 years ago that people are like, oh, it's yesterday's news. So is it 5 years ago? I mean, or is, I still, from what I'm hearing you guys saying, it is relevant. It's so important right now.
Well, the fundamental things that drive SEO have largely been unchanged. I mean, people say social media obviously has much more impact in where you're ranking for some of the results. But a lot of the things that we'll talk about today, like the content on the pages of your website, how many people are linking to your website? How strong are those domains that are linking to you? Is it the New York Times, or is it the New York, local magazine that no one's ever heard of? Like, all of these things are still drive on the search engine results. The one thing that's changed besides social media is also sort of mobile, and the fall of Flash as a technology, which I think is fantastic, because there's a lot of other ways to do sort of interactive things that are search engine friendly. But the basics have been unchanged, and I think that's a good thing, because that way people don't get dissuaded. Their sites, for the most part, if you're an authentic site that's not trying to game the system, you're not going to go from the #1 position to number 275 overnight. That just doesn't happen. They're smarter than that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's real important, is that if Alan uses the word authentic, if you're legitimate and you do things according to Google and Yahoo and Bing's terms and conditions, you'll definitely, not definitely, but there's a good chance that you're going to remain in a favorable search position. Where people get into trouble is when they do try to game the system, and then what happens is Google figures out that people are gaming the system, and then they come out with a new algorithm, and that's where we're at now with, I think, Panda version 3. And so every time they're tweaking these algorithms more and more, and they tweak them in such a way to continue to return valuable and usable results to the user, because they're all about returning useful information to the user. That's their main goal. And so they're not looking for people who repeat the word plumber like that. So content really.
Panda to me is like Chinese, Blake. So explain that again. So Panda, whatever version you just said. I mean, you could say tiger or snow leopard, and I'm so confused. So
right. What
is Panda? Like, just briefly, like, what does that mean to me as an everyday person?
Well, Google names their algorithm updates just like Apple names their operating system updates. Okay. And they generally are using animals. And Panda is the latest iteration, if you will, of their updates.
Okay.
And the major thing in this update was backlinking that was illegitimate backlinking. People were buying links, and one of the main signals that Google was using were how many backlinks you had to your site. Well, once people figured that out, then everybody was changing links with everybody, and you had photographers changing links with dog breeders, and the guy looking for a dog breeder is not looking for a photographer in most cases. And so Google got wind of that and said, this is crazy. These links are not relevant. They're not relevant links. That's their word. And so they came down very, very hard on unhealthy linking or illegitimate linking. That's the major update of Panda.
You see, a good analogy is Facebook, because we've all seen how the news feed has changed over time. 6 months ago, you couldn't go into your news feed without seeing one of those Upworthy videos, the feel-good videos that you won't believe what happened next kind of thing. And Facebook really cracked down because they found that it really kind of made people angry. It's such a baited way to get people to click off, and then it's not what you expect. Search engines are about giving and meeting your expectation. If you look for New York plumber, you don't want a flash mob dance of guys wearing plumbing outfits. And so in the same way that Google has Panda or these different successive versions of their algorithm, Facebook does the same, because they're in the same, they have the same sort of generic problem, which is we have all of this content. What's the best way to present the content to the viewer so that they keep using the service? And that's sort of key for Google, right? They want you to come back. They don't want you to go to Bing, to Dogpile, to whatever search engine still exists out there. They want you to stay on Google, and they can do that as long as they're giving you good results. And you think, oh, Google's a verb. I'm going to go Google something.
So based on that, and I have to out myself, years ago, and even before I heard you speak, Alan, once I heard you speak, I was turned. But I did believe SEO was only for consumer photographers, and I use that word loosely for, wedding photographers, baby photographers, senior portraits. And I hope today, everyone listening, I hope it's a mix of commercial photographers and consumer photographers, because this talk is really for everybody. But explain to me why it's not just for the consumer photographer. Why should commercial photographers take this so seriously? And we're thinking about the end result. We're thinking about that art producer, that art director, that photo editor that is searching. Like, explain to me that. Like, why is it really relevant?
I think in any discipline, there's always the 5 or 10 people that everybody knows in that discipline. And when you think of like super high, typically when people think of commercial photography, they're automatically going to the highest end person that they can identify, whether it's fashion or photographing vodka bottles, etc. The fact of the matter is, you're not one of the 10. You're probably not one of the 10 if you're on this call. If you're not one of the 10, then someone's looking for you. And I always think back to, when you're flipping through a magazine and you see an ad that you really like. Maybe it's a Prada ad, and you go, Prada ad, coat, photographer. You're never able to find in a search engine who shot a given campaign, because those people are never optimizing for that. They're relying on their fancy agencies to do that. But what a missed opportunity to send traffic to your website and for people to know who you are and then try to convert them in some form or fashion, whether it's to be hired for another campaign or just to sell, a napkin that has the photo of that product coat on it, which obviously you can't do for licensing reasons, but I think you understand the point. So I think that there's a lot of different areas where you can look at that and say commercial photographers are missing out. And again, you don't have to take my word on it. You can go and execute some searches to find what the search volume is on specific terms and see if you're really missing out on an opportunity there.
Well, that raises a question, Blake. I want you to answer this, because I Googled before I started this. 2 years ago, I Googled best food photographer, and a live book site came up, and it kind of made me go, wait a second. So this Splash website and isn't necessarily holding everything up. He has to have other factors. It made me kind of realize that there was other factors, because I know it wasn't just his templated site that was driving that great #1 placement. Today I Googled it, and I got Francesco Tonelli, best food photographer, Joe Brooks in Orlando. So I got a New York photographer and Orlando photographer, best food photographer. best lifestyle photographer, I got Michael Weschler in New York. So, what is driving that, Blake? What is making them come up? Because I got somebody in Orlando, which everybody knows I live in Orlando. So obviously I thought Joe came up for that, but why Francesco Tonelli in New York came up second?
Well, Google has, people speculate that there's more than 250 signals that they look at a website for. Everything, it ranges from the age of the domain to some of the metadata that's on the site itself. There are so many of these indicators, and I think what's important in your question, even beyond what's making those guys come up number one, is that they've figured out that there are some people that are searching for best food photographer, and that's always one of the big challenges in SEO, is you have to come up with what are my potential clients, what search phrase do they look for. And I do keyword research to figure out what those words could be, and also to figure out more long tail words, because those give you relevant results also, and people do search for those. Generally speaking, there's a localization factor. So if somebody would be looking for a New York food photographer, maybe best New York photographer, but those factors, he could be writing a blog that has links pointing, that in the blog he has links pointing back to his site. He could be doing comments on other blogs and other forums. He could be very active in Facebook and social media and LinkedIn. All those things are things that Google look at.
And those are all those 200 factors?
Exactly.
And Google also localizes results for you even if you don't ask for it. So it's very possible that because Google knows you're using a certain IP address that falls in the Orlando range, that they're going to serve up an Orlando photographer for you. One of the challenges nowadays is that we don't really know what everyone else is seeing. Right. And if you look at a Google search result page, in the upper right corner there's a little head and shoulders icon next to a world icon. And one is sort of personalized for you based on your search history and what they know about you from your Google profile, et cetera, and all the data you give them, all the Gmail that they've gone through. And then the world icon is, in theory, the generic result. But that concept almost doesn't even exist anymore in search. So my suspicion is that the Orlando guy came up in part because you're in Orlando, and it's sort of automatically assumed that maybe, because when you type in something like sushi restaurant, even if you don't type in Orlando, it's going to serve you up sushi restaurants in Orlando because it knows you're there, and so you're probably seeing a little bit of that localization happening.
It's fascinating. Well, I just learned about the head and shoulders in the world, so thanks for that information. So you're telling me, and I know this, and I'm learning more and more, that it's beyond just good keywording. I heard you say, Blake, back linking, I think was the word you used. Alan and Blake, talk to me about that. It's beyond, like, those 200, and obviously we're not going to go through all 200. What are some of those key factors beyond good social media? What do I need to know about?
Yeah, some of that stuff we mentioned, and stuff that you can't game. So something like the age of your domain, you can't fake the age of your domain. But that said, it's not like age of domain is going to throw you over the top because your domain is 10 years old and another guy's is 5 years old. Doesn't mean you're going to win. You're going to beat that guy necessarily. Mm-hmm. So again, it's a combination of things. So the on-page stuff that we can even go into more in depth. It's not just the text on the page. It's also what's known as the page title. It's also the words that create links on your website and other websites that send traffic to you. It's the number of links. It's the quality of the links. In terms of like the good domains, I always like to use this analogy. If you were in the business of building rocket ships, would you rather be linked to by nasa.gov or nigerianrocketships.com? It's a very easy way to sort of illustrate the strength of a domain, and so you can start to understand all of these little factors. And again, there's a bunch of guys sitting in a room in Google that have to figure out how to come up with the best results. And all your conspiracy theories aside, if you were given the same assignment, you can start to see, okay, well, if I did this, then someone might try to game it this way. So I have to do this. And then all of a sudden, how many different parameters, or signals as we call them, are going to help create results. And in the case that Blake mentioned, we think there's about 250 or so different factors that affect your search engine ranking, and none of them are going to automatically throw you over the top. You have to kind of do the full tilt, and again, it comes down to authenticity of your efforts and what you're writing and how frequently you're doing it, and who's linking to you and who's reading what you're saying.
You know, the other thing you can do, Amanda, is you can do your search for maybe an NYC healthcare photographer and see who is ranking highly, and then go to their page and look at their source and try to figure out what is it, why are they ranking highly, what can I do that they're doing. All things being equal, if everything was equal between my site and your site, say for example, and I just happen to have a better written meta description tag, I'll rank higher than you. But there's so many different factors. There's so many different factors that it's hard to isolate. Well, maybe I'm failing here, maybe I'm failing here.
We'll say I'm a still life photographer in Detroit, and I come to you, and I'm just asking for your advice, maybe as a friend. I may say, just tell me some basic strategies, like obviously, you know, and I think that's the first tip you just said, is looking to see who your competition is. You guys have said this to me in the past, or you've said it in different seminars I've heard you say, is actually Google what you think you would come up after, and that's really your competition. So beyond that, once I identify that, you know, what are some easy strategies that I can do in my layman terms? I can do it. What are those things that I can do to become competitive?
I think the easiest ones, and things that you have access to, regardless if you have a WordPress site or you have a template site or you have an HTML5 site, you can definitely play with the metadata on your site. The title tag is very, very important. It should be very concise, 8 words usually, 9 words max, about what you do. And in your title tag, you wouldn't want to have Blake Disher, corporate photographer, because like Alan said, I'm not one of those top 10 guys. Nobody is looking for Blake Disher except my mom, right, when they search. So it's important that I don't get bothered with having my name in that title. I want to be talking about what it is I do. So I would have Detroit corporate photographer in that title for sure, if that was my main line of business.
And that title tag is what's streaming across the top. Right now we're at Google Plus Hangouts.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's the title tag. And then the other one you want to pay attention to is the description tag. That's huge. That should be the same thing, well written with some of your keyword phrases incorporated into that. Those are 2 huge indicators. You have alt tags on images, which are basically you're just putting in words what the image is about. Those 3 things those would get somebody started down the right path.
Those, the title tag and the description tag, incidentally, are also what are displayed when someone searches. And in the search results, you see the title tag is the big link, and the description tag is that short description under. We've all seen artists' websites where the description is home, gallery, about, contact, because they have no text on the page. And that's a perfect example of people that have no idea what they're doing and the importance of SEO. And you know, you can think about it psychologically. If you were looking for a Detroit corporate photographer, and you saw a site that said Detroit corporate photographer Blake Disher photographs top corporate executives in a variety of industries, and then you saw mine that said Detroit Alan Murabayashi, home, menu, contact. What are you going to click on? You know, you're going to click on the one that seems more trustworthy because you see a funny name and you see like a home and contact, and well, why would you click on that? So even from a search results perspective, there's a lot of psychology that goes into like how someone's going to react to the search results. So not only is it good because the keywords help reinforce what you want to be found for, but it's good because when someone's looking at the search page, the search results page, they want to click on the one that, again, meets their expectation.
Well, Alan,
I think that's.
Sorry, go ahead, Blake.
I was just going to say, I think that's a very good point. I mean, all of this is great, and you know, with either a do-it-yourself effort or hiring an expert to do this for you, it's okay. You can be on that first page, but what Alan is speaking to are conversions. And if you're not paying attention to the human side of that body copy and the human side of that description, then what happens is you're there, but nobody's clicking on your link, and you've wasted time and or money optimizing your site.
Great. I keep forgetting I'm in a Google Hangout. I'm like really feel like I'm alone with you guys. I'm wanting to learn more, so I hope everybody else is feeling like this. I wanted to go back to you, Alan, in terms of you were the co-founder of Photo Shelter, and you thought about all these things. And being a consultant, former consultant, it's always been very important for me to get photographers images up quickly. That's why I'm always pushing for templates and getting a homepage that looks really pretty. I don't want to see body copy. So when you guys are saying this to me, I'm like, how can you make it look really pretty but still get that body copy? So as a photographer, what are the key things a photographer should be looking for when going to a templated site?
First of all, don't ever build your own site. Those days are over, And again, obviously, I think Photo Shelter has great websites, but there are a myriad of options out there, and there are WordPress options that also look great and work well for SEO. Building your own website is sort of akin to building your own camera nowadays. There's just too much technology, and it's shifting too quickly that there's no point in doing that. So what should you look for when you're looking at a website? A lot of these little fields that we were talking about, the ability to override the page title, the ability to put in a meta description, which is something that only the computers read, the ability to put in body copy, the ability to put in an alt description for your images. All of these little SEO tweaks are things that your website should allow you to do if you want to win. Now, the alt description, the alternate description for images is interesting because a lot of people ask me, well, how do I get into Google Images, which is a whole completely different team than regular Google. And that has its own set of rules and algorithms and signals, and one of those is the presence of the alt text. And if you have a Niagara Falls photo, well then your alt text better say Niagara Falls photo, and the file name ought to be Niagara-Falls-photo.jpg. I mean, there's a lot of ways to sort of reinforce that this is what this photo is. And so when you're evaluating website options out there, just because they say this is SEO optimized doesn't mean that it is true. You really need to be looking at some of these finer points that we've been talking about and make sure that you have the ability to change them and tweak them so that you can optimize your site.
Those are great points to ask. Okay, so going back to that photographer, say we have 3 different artists in 3 different locations, okay? I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget it. The players are commercial lifestyle photographer in LA,
okay.
Editorial portrait guy in New York, and an illustrator in North Carolina. Who has a better chance?
Illustrator in North Carolina.
Yeah, illustrator in North Carolina, that's an easy one.
Yeah. Just not as competitive, both in real life and online.
Okay, so we knocked number 1 out. So yay, illustrator in North Carolina. But we have this lifestyle guy in LA, very competitive with this portrait guy. They're not being searched for the same rankings, but this editorial guy in New York. I mean, 2 major mega cities. One's Mecca, one's still secondary major market. Who next has the better chance, LA or New York?
If I were to look at those, I would say probably the LA commercial lifestyle photographer. Generally speaking, the more words in the search phrase, the more success you'll have, and that's why I spoke very early on to those long tail phrases. If you're just searching for Los Angeles photographer, you're going to get everybody, and you're probably going to get a lot of wedding guys on the wedding photographers on that front page. Why? Because they have a lot of body copy on their page. They're constantly talking about they just shot Mike and Mary's wedding and it was great and it took place in Los Angeles, and they're talking about about what they do. And so I would say that probably I would probably do the commercial lifestyle guy in LA. Do you agree, Alan? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I do agree. I would also emphasize that when we talk about search engine optimization, we're not talking about your website coming up for one search term or one search phrase, right? So, Amanda, you posed the question of like LA lifestyle photographer. That is one of about 50 keywords that you should have in mind that you want to come up for your search engine optimization. So when we talk about practical steps to building SEO, I always say the first thing you got to do is decide what phrases are important to you, what keywords and phrases are important to you. Create a list of 25 to 50 of them. Start with some very general ones like LA lifestyle photographer, but then get very specific. LA lifestyle kids photographer, Santa Barbara lifestyle surf photography. And this is what Blake is talking about when he says long tail. We're talking about phrases that have in excess of 3-4 terms in them. And obviously, the more terms that you get, the more niche that it becomes. But then, therefore, the easier it is for you to win, to become number one at those terms. And so, your goal in SEO is not to try to win for all 50 words simultaneously. It's to win at the more niche terms, and then gradually, as you build your domain power, your SEO power, then you can start to become on that first page of results for the more generic terms.
I've never heard it said that way. I like that, the niche terms. That's a good focus. It's kind of like the Netflix. It's that long tail that those have more success over the long run. Well, now that most New York listeners watching this right now went click and got out of this because you guys told them they all didn't have a chance, let's talk to them. Like, what about these New York photographers? Do they even have a chance? Is SEO just not a prong of marketing for them?
No, I think they do. I mean, I'm working with, in fact, he's an agency access client right now. I'm working with a guy in New York who is a medical photographer, healthcare photographer, and in the course of 45 days, we've had very good success with, I think we're working on about 18 different phrases, and 8 of them, as of today, we're on page 1 already. Yeah. So, I mean, that's, there's some success there. And his phrase is not New York NYC photographer, but it's NYC healthcare photographer, NYC medical photographer. I've got the printout here of what he's doing well on. Corporate industrial photographer NYC, he's number 1. Right. So I mean, he's doing very well, and Alan spoke to me seeing different results when I do this report here than you may see in New York. But if I'm seeing him for number 1 here in Michigan when I do that search, then I know he's doing very well in New York.
That's great. So, and that's current day.
What's
so
that?
That's current day New York status. So that's good for all those other New York listeners who.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I need to move to Colorado.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about the being on the first search results page? First of all, no one goes to the second page. It's not like in 1995 where we literally ran out of pages of search results and you'd hit next, 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 and on page 3 you'd run out of results. People will refine their search results rather than go to page 2. They're not seeing what they want to find. So the difference between the number 1 guy and the number 10 guy in terms of the ability to displace them is significant. Usually the number 1 and the number 2 guys, you're going to have to work really, really hard and over the course of a year or more to really try to challenge those guys. But to get to position 10 in a lot of cases, it doesn't take that much effort. It takes an effort, but it doesn't take that much to displace those guys. So again, a methodology to go about this, we said create a keyword list so you know what you're trying to optimize for in the first place. Execute a Google search on all of those terms so you know who your online competition is. And then what I like to do next is do what's called a backlink analysis. I just like to know approximately how many links each one of those results get. Because links in a lot of ways it's a decent proxy for overall SEO strength in my opinion. There's a website called Majestic SEO, which is a backlink analysis, a free backlink analysis thing. So I could put in a New York portrait photographer. I could see who's number 1 and do a backlink analysis on it and see that he's got 40,000 links coming to him. And I could look at number 10 and see that he has 2,000 links coming to him. And you usually see, you know, an order of magnitude difference between the number 1 guy and the number 10 guy in terms of number of links coming in. And so the question then is, okay, maybe New York portrait photographer is too difficult, but New York healthcare photographer might be 2,000 links for the top guy and 75 links for the bottom guy. Can you create 75 links to your website that reinforce New York healthcare photographer in the next 6 months? And I think that if you had a plan to do so, of course you could. And so to Blake's point, within the course of a few weeks, he's already ranking for some of the terms just because he went through that exercise of identifying what they wanted to be optimized on, and then he had a strategy for building some SEO juice against those terms.
Right. MajesticSEO.com.
Yep.
We'll include that on the bottom of this so everybody can click on that link. That's a huge aha moment for me, Alan. You just made something go, wait, backlinks, it makes sense now to me. It's in layman terms for me, so thank you. I'm excited. Blake, hire an expert or do-it-yourself project. Explain that to me, because I want the do-it-yourselfers to walk away going, I can do this, but I also want the people that are either too busy or need help. Like, when do you draw the line in the sand and decide either or?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and when I speak on SEO, that's the question that I'm always asked. Is it possible to do this on your own? And of course it is. And I think that it is if you're willing to put in the time. And I think it really gets down to the question. Look, I was a very early adopter on the whole internet thing. I was one of the first photographers in Detroit to have a website. And then all of a sudden this thing named Google comes around, and I'm thinking like, oh, that's cool. So I start to do SEO. So my efforts on my site have always been incremental, and I've always been able to stay current with what Google is doing because they've done it in small steps. But now somebody coming in today has to get current very quickly. So if you have the time to do the research, I think anybody can do this. But it comes down to a question of what would you rather be doing with your time. And I always say that as an SEO consultant, you work on improving your business. You work on putting together a portfolio. You put together a marketing plan. You put together all those things, the networking that you need to do. And perhaps that would be better, you'd be better served to hire somebody to do your SEO campaign for you. Because I have to say, it would be tough to become an expert in SEO quickly. So can you do it? Sure. There's a lot of information out there on the internet, of course there is. But I think it's just a matter of where is your time best spent?
I agree with that. You know, I had a leaky toilet a little while ago. I always have toilet analogies for my SEO. I had a leaky toilet, and I said, you know what, I'm going to watch a couple YouTube videos, and then I'm going to go to Home Depot, and then I'm going to try to fix it myself. And I tried to fix it myself, and I was with the, I went to go buy a wrench. I said, oh, I don't have the right wrench. I go buy a wrench. Now an hour has passed. I'm taking apart the assembly. Pieces aren't looking like what I saw on YouTube. The thing is still leaking. And then eventually, after I was already in maybe $50 on parts and supplies, it got too hairy, and I had to call a real plumber, and in New York they're very expensive, and I probably ended up spending $300 additionally to have the guy come out and fix it in 10 minutes because he just knew what he was doing. So I agree with Blake that having an expert to help guide you could save you a lot of time and money. Part of the challenge with SEO, however, is it's not a one-off thing. It's not like Blake comes in and in one weekend he fixes SEO and then all of a sudden the toilet's fixed and it's not leaking anymore. SEO is you creating content, following a strategy and some guidelines, and you doing it continually. And maybe periodically you get a few big viral hits that really help build some link juice back to you, etc. So I guess that's sort of the buyer beware warning is you have to be ready to invest time because this is a marketing activity, just like you would to market anything for your business. And as long as you have that sort of expectation in your head, you'll be fine.
I think that's a great lesson on expectations because, I mean, even being a former consultant, I mean, you can give tons of advice and say, go do this, but you have to put the effort in. You have to build the content. So if somebody is ready for SEO, you have to be ready not only to fix back-end links and to change your title tags, but you also want to be creating constant good content. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
If
Yeah, absolutely. I
I
mean,
know oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say it really becomes a team effort. With my client that I was referring to in New York, I told him, hey, Robert, I need to have 500 words of body copy. I need 3 or 4 or 5 blog posts with 300 words each, and so it really does become a joint effort. The only other thing I wanted to talk about was Alan talked about link juice, right? And you're not buying that at the store down the street. Basically, what link juice is he said you get a viral hit, and then all of a sudden you have high link juice, and that's what we're talking about when we're talking about incoming links back to your site. If all of a sudden your picture, for whatever, I can give you a good example. There's a fellow in New York when the plane landed on the Hudson, and I'm blanking on his name, and I hope he's not watching because I should know. He happened to have the pictures for the salvage company that went out and got the plane, and he took it on. He followed it all the way to New Jersey or wherever they took that to do the investigation of what happened there, and talk about link juice. He had him on his website, and he was getting hits like crazy. And all I could think of was, that's excellent for your SEO. You're going to do great. So.
What? Give me one success story each that you guys have found SEO to be proven factor, because everybody's gone, it's kind of this black magic. Nobody can really see it. It's run by the Godfather. But really, what is a success story that's tangible for the people that are listening today?
There's a guy named Randy Santos in DC. He is a DC stock photographer. His website is dcstockphotos.com. When you go to his homepage and you see some of his images, he's meticulous about captioning all of the images, having descriptive body copy, and then going out and doing enough marketing promotion to drive links and social activity to his website. And so when you Google DC stock photography or DC stock photographer, he's #1. So he's doing a lot of things right. The domain is the search term. The title is the search term. The body copy reinforces all of that stuff. He's got a huge archive that, that's not 30 of his best photos. It's 10,000 of his best photos, all captioned with Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial, White House, etc. And talking about search engine optimization, you don't want to be the needle in the haystack. You want to be the haystack. You want to have the largest footprint possible online that you can, and therefore having all of this content out there with keywords that reinforces what that is has made him very successful. And I think that's exactly the way you want to sort of approach your SEO as a photographer.
Right. And that was self-built SEO, right? That was him being a really good maintenance man of his own SEO.
Yeah, he's using photo shelters, so we're putting the content in the right places. But again, that if he wasn't willing to do that work up front, then none of that would exist in the first place.
Great.
Yeah, I think one of the things that helps there is Google loves large sites. So when Alan says he has 10,000 of his best images up there, if you start trying to think like Google thinks, if somebody is looking for a stock photographer or a stock, some sort of a stock image, Google sees this guy that Alan's talking about as a really valuable resource for the person who's searching for that image, because if they see, and Google knows that there's 10,000 images there, they say, there's a good chance that this guy has this picture that this guy is searching for. And if the keywords match and if all that matches, then he's going to be a high hit on that. And
that's the antithesis of how portfolios have typically been structured. Portfolios are usually this heavily curated, my best 30 images. And what we're advocating is really creating more content. Instead of putting your best images, put your commercially viable images out there. And instead of thinking of it as, I'm an illustrator and these are the 10 best things, put the sketches out there, create an archive, searchable archive site, keyword the hell out of it, and I think you'll have more success that way.
And as a consultant, I'm cringing. So how do you get the best of both worlds? Of, sorry, I have to say it. I'm like going, ah! But I'm trying to, because I believe so much in SEO. How can I have my cake and eat it too? Because what I'm hearing you guys say is multiple pages is better than, say, like a one gallery and it's clean and neat. So if I'm having multiple pages, Google's gonna like me more. How can I get that how can I have that happy balance?
Well, creating a blog is one way to create a lot of content. Another thing that we see a lot that is supported by the photo shelter websites is a separate section for your portfolio images and a separate section for your searchable archive. And so the expectation then is set, again, for the viewer who just wants to see your 10 best. They can see that. But in a lot of cases, if they see a few images in your portfolio that are really good and they say, oh, I wish I could see more of these types of images, again, behaviorally, wouldn't you want them to be able to search? Why are we so dependent culturally on Google to find stuff, but then when they come to our website, nobody can search anything on our website? It's kind of strange, you know? And so I think that you have to sort of extend that metaphor over to your own website, create a lot of content on your own website, and just make it searchable.
Great. Well, we're coming to an end, but we have some questions coming in, so I want to answer a few questions, and then we're going to wrap this up. But let's just take maybe 2 or 3. I have one that comes in from Amy S., and she says, besides Google, what other search engine should I focus my SEO efforts on?
Well, I would say that I would concentrate very, very highly on Google, obviously because of market share, but I would say this. If you are in the retail space, maybe wedding and portraits, I would definitely pay attention to Yahoo. Yahoo to this day is still the default browser on some cable systems installs, and the mom of the bride might not know how to make that not the opening page when she turns on her Internet Explorer on her Windows machine. And so she may be searching on that portal page there. I mean, my dad had the Yahoo homepage on his computer for 5 years because he did not have it.
My father still has it on, so very good point, very good point.
Yeah, so I think it depends what space you're working in our creative industries. But I think you really need to be paying attention to Google primarily.
Okay, great. Well, this is a really great question. This is from Larry B. on Facebook. I'm a photographer based in a pretty small market. Should I commit less money to paid SEO efforts because there is less competition around me, or should I pay more so that I can reach the large markets close to me? So that's a really great question.
I don't necessarily think that you should start by paying. If what he's implying is that he's paying for ads so that he appears at the top, I think you can do a lot in a small market organically by just following some of the steps that Blake and I outlined today. And do that as a starting point. If you find that the addressable market in your smaller area isn't large enough to support your business, well, that's a whole business operations problem to consider that goes beyond SEO in the first place. So I think you have to tackle one problem before you tackle the next one.
That's great. Now, one last thing for everybody. What are 3 takeaways that my gurus, the experts, what do you want people to take away from today, whether it's information you weren't able to cover or something that you just want to reiterate? What are those 3 important takeaways about SEO? Blake, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, one thing we didn't touch on because it starts to get a little bit propeller heady is Google Analytics. And Analytics is a tool that anybody with any interest in SEO should be using. And you do a search for that's analytics.google.com, and you create an account there, and you put a little code snippet into your website, and then it starts tracking visitor behavior on your website. And it starts looking at what pages your visitors are looking through, how long they're spending on each page, how many pages they look at before they leave your site, and it can give you some real insight. And I always say that analytics for any of the photographers there is sort of like Photoshop. There's so many things that you can do with it. I always joke that I just found out that the brackets adjust the brush size in Photoshop. I wish I'd known that 20 years ago, but analytics is the same thing. And I discovered these very cool apps, for both Android and for iPhone and for iPad that take the real important data from analytics and put it all together in a very, very accessible chart, bar graphs and things like that. And so I've got 2 of those, and let me find here. Here it is. So the first one is called Dashboard for Google Analytics. And just do a search for that, and you'll see it there. That one is like $4.99, and then the one that's free is called Simply Stats for Google Analytics. And Simply Stats for Google Analytics is awesome. I look at it every day, see what people are doing, and see what pages are piquing people's interests.
Great. So even I could follow it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
And then the other thing that's happened, you asked for three, so that my second one would be to be paying attention to Google reviews. In the search engine results pages that come back now, there's reviews. Those are written on Google+. And if you have clients that you can ask for positive reviews, I would definitely make that request of your satisfied clients, because those reviews have become a signal for Google. And then, the other thing is that Google loves to see fresh content. And if your site hasn't been updated in a year, 2 years, you need to be updating your site more frequently than that. There's another fellow in Detroit for the photography site, my site and his site, Dwight Sandrowski, maybe he's listening. And he and I tend to leapfrog each other for the main keyword phrases here, because he's pretty SEO savvy as well. And if I'm not paying attention, all things being equal, all of a sudden he jumps up above me. I got to go run to his site, see what he did, and the chances are he just updated something, and Google says, "Oh, that's fresh content," and now he's ranking higher than I am. So
define for fresh content. From a consultant, fresh content to me means putting new pretty images in a gallery. What does content mean to you?
It can mean new body copy. It could mean new images. When Google's looking at content, one of the things that they're looking at is the kilobyte size of the page. And so when just by virtue of putting new images in place, you're going to alter that size. And Google loves to see fresh content. Because, again, put yourself in the mind of Google. And if they can serve up a page that hasn't been updated for 2.5 years, or a page that's been updated yesterday, they're going to say there must be more relevant information on that current page than there is one from 2 years ago. So we're going to put that page up on top, all things being equal.
Great. Thank you.
The sister companion to Google Analytics is something called Google Webmaster. Google Webmaster is great because it gives you a lot of keyword information. So, for example, I'm looking at one, and maybe I can actually share it, even though it'll be a little bit small for you to see. But what it shows you are the terms that are actually sending traffic to your website. So here, food photography showed up in 6,650 search engine result pages. It was clicked on 347 times for a click-through rate of 5%. And the average position of one of the pages on this website was 7.6. So it was in the top 10, and people clicked on it 5% of the time. So that's some pretty potent information in helping you understand how people are interacting with your website. Google also has something called Google Businesses. If you go to google.com/business, you'll be able to create one of those Google business pages from which you can spawn those reviews. And even if you don't have a physical space, you can still create a page in Google Businesses. And it's one of those things that's going to help you come up in the localized searches. So if I'm searching for Detroit portrait photographer, and you've often seen search results for restaurants on a map, a small Google Maps, and some of the search results. All of that is because these people have Google business pages. The last is I wrote a little blog post that has a bunch of links that might be of interest to you guys, including that majestic SEO, but I thought it'd be easier to sort of list out. So if you go to my blog at blog.photoshelter.com and you look for the No Fear SEO title that I wrote yesterday, you'll be able to get some of what we talked about today, and I think a handful of links that'll help you understand what SEO is and how to attack it.
Thank you so much, Alan. That's great. Well, all of this information is going to be at the bottom of this Hangout, and if you guys want to reference back this Hangout or other Hangouts that Nick Moy has done, please just go to the YouTube channel, Agency Access. Thank you, Blake and Alan. You guys are seriously, like, my brain hurts. I need to go get a shot of coffee and an aspirin to recover from this, because so much information, but I can't stress enough. It's scary, and it intimidates me, but it reminds me why this has to be an additional prong of marketing. So if you have email, direct mail, you're doing portfolio reviews, you've got to put SEO on that prong list that you're tackling. So you guys have really made it more palatable today than it was yesterday. So thank you guys for taking the time to really share this with the community. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. And join Agency Access YouTube channel for more Google Hangouts.